You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 250. Evolving from Expert to Thought Leader with Carol Cox. If you're a business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies to improve time management, elevate productivity, to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you joined me. I'm really looking forward to bringing this conversation to you so that you can meet our guest and my friend, Carol Cox. Carol is the founder and CEO of Speaking Your Brand, a coaching and training company that helps high-performing, purpose-driven women, entrepreneurs, and professionals create their signature talks and thought leadership platforms. Carol is the host of the weekly 5-star rated Speaking Your Brand podcast, and during election season serves as a Democratic political analyst on TV news. Carol was named as one of Orlando's Women of the Year in 2021 and has been featured in Forbes. Through her company and content, her mission is to empower more women to find and use their voice, to tell their stories that need to be told, and to activate ideas for change. This episode is going to dive into what thought leadership is and how it can serve as a branding and marketing tool in your business. And now, let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk, Carol. How are you?
Hi, Amber. So glad to be back.
Yes, I was going to say back. Welcome back. You are a seasoned guest here, and that's for good reason because you have so much value and so much to share with our audience. Today, I asked you to come here because I wanted you to talk to our audience all about thought leadership. We're going to get into what is it, how can it be of value if you're just getting started. But before we do that, for those that haven't heard you here at Productivity Straight Talk or are not already in your world, tell us something about yourself, about why we're talking to you about thought leadership and speaking that we did not hear in your official bio in the intro.
Yes. Oh, Amber. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. And I have been a serial entrepreneur for 20 years, and I've always used public speaking in all of the businesses that I have had before. Speaking Your Brand, I had web development, software development businesses. So I would go to a lot of tech conferences, business and marketing conferences. I always enjoyed speaking, and I was often the only woman on the stage, either the only woman on the panel or the only woman on the stage for many of the speakers who were there. And so when I decided to start Speaking Your Brand in 2015, I really wanted to focus on women entrepreneurs because I wanted to encourage and empower more women to take the stage, whether that's in person or virtual, as most of us have been doing for the past couple of years. And that also includes in the media, whether it's in articles like in Forbes or on TV news. I also have a background as a political analyst on TV news. So I am just passionate about having more women's voices out there for us to listen to and for us to emulate.
Yes. Now, you have helped me with my keynote, and that is through the Speaking Your Brand, which is speaking. But what's interesting is you really delve into this thought leadership. And maybe you were calling it that when we worked together years ago, but that's really what you did for me. I remember you and I sitting, we actually attended a podcasting conference in Philadelphia. I booked you for a VIP day and I came in early with my family. My family was there, not in the room when we're doing this, but we were all there. And we sat in a room and it was ironically like a therapy session where you're asking me all these questions, pulling out like, what do you believe? Why do you believe? What childhood stories do you have that are rooted in why you believe what you believe about whether it was entrepreneurship, time management, and productivity? And what I see clearly now is it wasn't just a keynote you were helping me with. You were really helping me find that thought leadership on a topic that I did know a lot about, but I would not have ever framed it that way. So there's our history. That's a snapshot of our history. But for those that are tuning in that are small business owners, let's just start with just the basics of what is thought leadership and how can it help our businesses?
Great, Amber. Well, I'm so glad that you remember that VIP day in that hotel room. I remember it so well too. And I remember asking you those questions and you're like, I don't know. Do I have to dig that deep? And
yeah.
I was like, well,
I'm like my childhood and hold on, because this is going to come up. This is going to come up in why this conversation of thought leadership, I know it. And I was like, why would they care? Meaning the audience. And I know I was challenging you and like squirming in my seat. And I'm thinking, why is she asking me this stuff? Because why would they care about a personal story from my background, my history, my journey, and childhood? And then when it was all pulled together, there's so many elements. So really what you do is so artful, right? It's the connection piece. It's the personal piece. It's the creating the credibility through experiences that you were pulling out. Whereas for me, in this time that we were working together, I'm like, no. I just have something to teach them. Like, yeah, no one wants to hear that. They want to hear how you got there and why you're teaching them.
yes. Okay. Well, Amber, so you have set this up so nicely as far as talking about thought leadership. So I'm going to kind of start a little bit in a different place and we'll come back to the definition of thought leadership. Okay. So what you just described, that kind of where your mindset was, what I just want to teach them something, is what I call the expert trap. And the expert trap is what happens to those of us who are experts in our fields. We have a lot of experience. We have a lot of know-how. We have a lot of practical things that we help our clients with. And you absolutely need to be an expert in your business and the work you do with your clients. The problem, though, is when you're standing on a stage and you're presenting, whether it's a keynote or a conference breakout session, if you're just providing just the facts, so to speak, so just the tactics and just the tips, we've all heard them before. We've all heard public speaking tips. We've all heard productivity tips. So you have to give your own spin, your own angle on it. And if you don't, then you stay in that expert trap, which means that you become undifferentiated and like what I call a commodity speaker. You're less likely to get paid. You're less likely to get paid well, and you're less likely to get those high profile speaking engagements. Instead, you want to kind of escape this expert trap into thought leadership. And there are 4 layers to your thought leadership. The first layer is your expertise, because obviously you need to talk about what your area of expertise is, but you don't stop there. The next layer is your big idea. What is it that you want to see different in your industry, in your field, or in society as a whole? What is it that kind of either like rubs you the wrong way, or you have a unique experience where you say things could be better for more people? That's your big idea. The next layer on top of that is your personal story. Why do you care about this big idea? You didn't just pluck it out of the air for no reason. You have a personal connection to it, Amber. You do.
Yes.
And then the 4th layer is the emotional courage to dig deep and to share it. So we're not talking about superficial stories of, oh, like when I was in college, I got an A+ in my class, so I decided that's what I was going to major in. No, not those kind of stories, but the stories that have an emotional heart to them, because that's where you're going to connect with your audience. It's going to be memorable to them, and they're going to relate to you and put themselves into your story.
Okay. So see, I didn't even know you had a framework. You were working on me that day. Just joking. But this is so big. Let me tell you why this is what's interesting too, is I have not paused and reflected of how much growth from then to now. Because when I think about speaking through the modality of this podcast, for example, man, I've had tears, I've cried, there's things I've been angry about, there's things that I pull back the curtain, and really there's no episode where I'm not sharing something personal, or I'm not sharing the why we're even talking about a particular topic, right? But when I was with you in that hotel room, where I was at in my journey, my entrepreneurial journey, and maybe we'll call it my thought leadership journey, was that the value I had to provide was only that of how I could teach them something. And what I didn't get was that they didn't want to hear just the teachings. They wanted to connect. And I thought there was no value, which brings me back to the comment I mentioned of, why would they care? What, are you kidding me? I only have so many minutes on this stage. Why would I fluff it with a story? And the truth is that, fast forward, that's probably like second nature to me now, but only because I've had to go through this journey of realizing where the value can come from.
Yes. And that was 3 years ago that we did that. That was in the summer of,
2017.
is it 2017 or 2019?
17.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So even longer.
Yeah.
And so here, and for those of you who are listening, so
I'm like, am I wrong? Hold on. I'm going to have to go look.
I don't know. I know
I think it was longer than that. Yeah.
Okay. I know we met in 2017 for the first time in person.
Oh, okay. So then maybe it was 2019.
It may have been a couple of years after that. But okay. So whether it's been 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, what have you. So for those of you listening, here's one thing that where Amber was talking about with the podcast. This is why I'm a podcaster. Amber's a podcaster. And this is why I love podcasting, because every week we show up. That means we have to iterate through our ideas. After I have almost 300 episodes of my podcast, I know, Amber, you're getting to 300 episodes. You can only do so many tactical training episodes week after week. And at some point, you have to dig deeper for yourself and you have to start sharing things. And this is why, for me, thought leadership is not like just like you have this flash of inspiration, you create it and then it stays static and it never evolves. Thought leadership is constantly iterative and it's constantly evolving as we learn more about ourselves.
Yes. If we had to define the definition of crazy, it would be that I thought I could do 300 episodes on productivity. But that's not what you think when you hit go on this idea of being a podcaster, and probably for yourself too, speaking. And I love that this is the tool that I've used. I'm sure maybe you too, is that it consistently makes you show up, like you said, and I have to think about what I'm going to say in a different creative way. Like that is the push that I've signed up to as being a podcaster that's dropping episodes weekly. And it's like really the best thing, because if you were to say, hey, Amber, like someone dropped out and I was attending a conference and you would say, go up there and speak, I'd be like, got it, done. But that would not have been me prior to deciding that I was going to practice my craft every single day or every single week, really.
Yes, absolutely. And this is the same thing for public speaking. I know a lot of times people say that they get a lot of nerves or that they're afraid of public speaking. And just like with most things, trust me, the more you do it, the better you'll get. I remember that, coming out of the pandemic earlier this year, I had not done an in-person speaking engagement for almost 2 years. And I was invited to give a keynote actually last September. So September 2021. And we were, people were still wearing masks in the audience. Like it was, it felt very weird. And that was my first time in front of a room of about like almost 100 people. Probably my first time in a room of people besides the grocery store. That many people since the pandemic started. And it definitely felt weird. It felt good to get back, but it definitely felt weird. And, but you kind of just like get through the little like cobwebs and stuff, like shake off the cobwebs and like get through it. And then once you start, you'll get better at it. And in that talk, the keynote that I gave, this comes back to the importance of your personal story. The event organizer gave me the topic. They wanted me to talk about finding your purpose. Now, that's not normally the topic I talk about, but for me, I'm always looking for, well, what's the angle that I can give other than just here are the 5 steps to find your purpose. So I started thinking, well, what happens when there's resistance to finding your purpose, where you think you're in your purpose and you face resistance, either from the outside or from within yourself? So I talked about that, and I shared a very personal story of something that had happened to me about 15 years ago, a professional setback that had caused me to lose my confidence and my purpose and my voice because I had faced this external resistance from this group of people, this sexist backlash, because I was a woman with a public voice and they didn't like it. And I realized as I was literally giving the keynote, this was not in my script, I said to the audience, oh, this is why I started speaking your brand, because I created the supportive community that I needed 15 years ago when I didn't have it. And I kind of lost myself for several years after that experience. And then I ended up creating Speaking Your Brand unconsciously to give other women what I saw that I needed. And I thought I was just creating a company that was going to help women, practically, like, here's your talk, go give it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, what a big aha, right? Because I know you're a preparer. You were helping me prepare for keynotes. And so even through all that preparation, that those dots weren't connected until you were in it and living it and passionate. And it was like, dude, like this is why I created Speaking Your Brand.
And that's the power of literally public speaking, like literally of saying things out loud. Because we can journal, we can think in things in our heads all of the time, but if saying things to someone else, whether it's a coach like Amber on your coaching calls, or it's a trusted friend or someone else or an audience, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's not TMI, as if it's appropriate for the audience. But there's so much insight that can come from that.
Yeah. I mean, my journey of public speaking and learning my expertise, right? And wanting to share that. Man, I remember preparing early. Like this is where I would find confidence, was like preparing and over preparing and preparing. And like you, like I would be shocked by what would come out of my mouth on stage. And I'm like, well, why couldn't that have come out when I had, the bullet points up and I'm like preparing? And then prior to the pandemic, like you, I would speak a lot. That's actually how I got my business going, was like every luncheon, everywhere anyone would let me present, I would present. But then it got easier because I would remember what I said. And then it's like, okay, we'll say that again. And then see what new good thing you can say. And it was the iterations of, just showing up and being present and finding your own confidence with your voice, which is something I think we're going to talk about today, because I have some things to share in my own personal experience about that. But when, people hear thought leadership, you talked about resistance internally or externally. What are some of those resistance that, business owners feel when they think, maybe I could do thought leadership? Oh, maybe I can't. No. Not me, somebody else.
The two things that I hear, number one is they have a lack of clarity around their ideas. So they maybe have several different ideas that have been swirling around in their head. They're not sure which direction to go in, or which idea is good. So a lot of the work that we do in Speaking Your Brand with our Thought Leader Academy, with the calls that we do with our clients, is to help validate their ideas, to say to them, yes, you're going in the right direction. This sounds good. Keep going. Because we all need that sense of validation.
Yeah,
rather than just having, living it by ourselves. So I would say clarity of their ideas and validation of their ideas, number one. And the second thing is really just the confidence to put themselves out there, especially the confidence to say things, maybe say things about their industry that may not be popular, or that a lot of other people aren't saying, or that may ruffle feathers, but that they know that it needs to be said because they may have experienced kind of the downsides of whatever is going on, and they want to make a change.
Yeah. When I first started out in productivity, it was, a little over a decade ago. And when you first start out, it's like, well, let's see what it is. Like you're reading the books and you're listening to other people's thought leadership and content and ways and tactics. And I know that for me, that the minute I decided I was good enough to not have to keep learning my expertise, the area of expertise, and I shut it down. Like, don't ask me the last time I read a time management book or a productivity book. It's been a very long time. And the reason was all those voices, all those ideas were drowning out me hearing my own opinion from the work I was doing. And so what I did was drown that out. And I was just experiencing what's working with me, with my clients, with my business, and hearing what those challenges were that build that confidence. But I couldn't hear that until I drowned it out everyone else that was already speaking louder than me in my industry.
Such a great point, Amber. I completely agree with you. People will often ask me, like, what other public speaking podcasts do you listen to, or what other, speaking coaches that you follow? And I don't, for the same reason, is because I'm very clear about what works for us, what works for our clients, and our own thought leadership and intellectual property. And not that I don't appreciate and respect what the other coaches are out there doing, but we just as human beings, we naturally absorb what other people are doing. And I don't want to like get myself all confused, whatever they're saying and versus what I'm saying.
100%. I don't want to wake up with a great idea and then ask myself, did I actually have that great idea, or did I fall asleep to a podcast of somebody else's idea? That actually was the start of it too, was the ethical part of like, I couldn't I couldn't speak on different things without hearing other people's voices happening. And again, I think it depends on where you're at when you're listening to this podcast. So first of all, if you're still listening to someone else in your industry, if you're newer, like I kind of think that's just it. That's what you do. Like that's where you're at. But there will be a time that you'll take the training wheels off. And that's when I think you find your own confidence quicker and faster, is when you're speaking from your own experience and your own work in the industry.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, do you feel like running your business is a constant struggle and you're sick of doing it all alone? It's time to get support. Go check out Amber's business coaching and training program, Leverage Lab. It's designed to help you take back control of your business and propel you to even greater success without having to sacrifice your personal life. If you want to increase profits, reduce stress, and run a business you actually love, go hit pause, click the link in the show notes to find out more, and grab your spot in Leverage Lab.
So we have this chart that I often show in the webinars that we do, and it's the speaker's journey. And so the very first level is what I call a trainer, and a trainer teaches on someone else's intellectual property. So we've seen this, we go to events or conferences and they say, well, this is so-and-so's method and they've licensed it or they're certified to that method. So they're a trainer. And so that's going to keep them at that level. The next one is the expert presenter, where again, there's no big idea, there's no personal connection to it. And then you go to what I call a story speaker, where you have a really good personal story. We've seen those, but there's really no like thought-provoking big idea with it. It's a personal story. It's very like you connect to it, but there's no big idea. Then there's the thought leader after that. And then the highest level is what I call a catalyst. You can think of them as influencers, where really their body of work is now being shared well beyond them without them putting the effort in. So you think of like the big name authors and big name podcasters who are out there, where it's just kind of like a perpetual motion machine for them.
Okay. So if we're a small business owner and we know that letting the world know what it is we do and how we can help them, right? That's marketing. That's how I define marketing. And that can be in so many different ways, right? We've got social media and we have, launches and we have podcasting and blogging and you name it. There's a strategy that has worked for someone. But before we hit record, what I was sharing with you is like, that's a way in which to share your thought leadership. And so this is really like the foundation of what could be your marketing strategy. And I want you to just share with us, like, why would it be important for a small business owner to take the time to become a thought leader in their industry? And how could that help them and their business?
Yeah, so great question, Amber. And as we know, there's just a lot of content out there online. With the start of the pandemic, more and more people were online, more people creating content, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, podcasts, YouTube videos. I mean, it's all over the place. So it's even harder for our content to get discovered. And it's even harder for the people who are already following our content to see it because of the algorithms. Yeah. And so, it takes more time. So if you have a captivating story, or if you're saying something, you have an opinion on something, you're sharing something that other people want to engage with, want to talk about, you'll be more likely to have that content commented on and shared and then hopefully propelled. So that's one aspect of it. It's still hard. I mean, I see the difference in content marketing today in 2022 versus 2 years ago, much less 4 or 5 years ago. Now, the second thing is that, and this is something probably, Amber, you're going to like, where is she going with this? Artificial intelligence. There are now really good artificial intelligent software services that you can sign up for, very inexpensive, $20 a month, that will write marketing copy for you, write social media copy for you, write ad copy for you. It's all original content. Artificial intelligence is taking the best landing pages, marketing content that exists online and creating it for you. They do the same thing with images. They do the same thing with videos. That tells me, number one, there's going to be an explosion of content because it's so easy now to create it. So we're going to have even more. And number two, it's going to even be better because the machines know how to make it better even than we can. So here is my pitch for public speaking. You know where you can find a captive, attentive audience? When you're speaking to them on a stage, or virtually, whether you have 20 people on a Zoom webinar you're doing, or you have 100 people on a conference breakout session, they are paying attention to you and you're a real person sharing real information. And so that's why I'm so excited to get back to public speaking after the pandemic, because I really feel like that's where we're going to be able to make such a difference for our businesses and for our brands.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So then the method would be public speaking. I'm not surprised. And like I had said, like I started public speaking because I didn't know any different. In fact, a decade ago, like there wasn't like, ads and social media. It was like, how do you get in front of people and talk about what it is you can do to help them? And I didn't know any better other than tropping all over town to every luncheon, every kind of event. So now there's that, but there's also like you're filling the room, like a webinar, or someone's filling the room for you on a webinar training, and then you get to be the guest expert. But all of that is that people want to hear something from you, right? And so again, like, how do you take this back to why would I have something different to say on productivity when I was newer? Like, what would you tell me, right? I'm on my thought. You did tell me, but we'll pretend we did not hang out and do a VIP day. But when I'm on a topic like productivity that truly is a very masculine industry, a lot of men talking about productivity. There's a lot of people talking about it from different places. What advice would you give me to say, you know what, you could be your own thought leader on this and people will find you because they want to hear what you have to say?
So the first thing, Amber, and you did this, was have a framework. Have your own intellectual property, have your own framework around how you see productivity. And I know you had STOP, the STOP acronym for that.
OMG, y'all are going to hear this in real time. We are not even hitting pause. I know it wasn't in 2018. I think it was earlier. And now, because of that time together, I literally need to pause. You guys are listening to this. I'm taking a deep breath. That is the framework to all of my private coaching, my group coaching program. There's been many iterations of it, but the STOP leverage formula, STOP, is how to leverage yourself, time, organization, and people. And if you've been around Productivity Straight Talk for a while, we talk about leveraging yourself, mindset, time, organization, processes, and people, and leading your team. And the work we did by you asking me to create a framework that was all my own was the foundation to so much of the way I serve my clients this many years later. Woo!
I love to hear that, Amber.
Right?
Yes.
I didn't even connect that dot. People are hearing this in real time of us connecting those dots. So yes, STOP leverage formula is now copywritten or trademarked, right? Like I went all the way through it and it is not going away. And it's only gotten better with all the iterations since then.
And that's a great example of your thought leadership. And it's an asset that you've created for your business that now has just infused so much of what you do. I remembered it.
Yeah,
people remember acronyms. People remember alliterations. People remember visual shapes. If I say Maslow's hierarchy of needs, everyone pictures a triangle. So those are all frameworks, and that's thought leadership. Okay, so we have the framework. So you have that. So
but I did not have that.
Okay, well you have that now.
I do. I just want everybody to hear that. I walked into that room. I did not have that. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
3 hours later.
Yeah.
We had it.
Exactly.
All right. So we have the thought leadership. And then why I asked you those questions about like, why does productivity matter to you? Why does time management matter to you? Is because your audience wants to know that personal connection. Because here's the thing, as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, as someone selling, hopefully getting them to buy what you are selling, is that if they understand why you care about it, they're going to be more likely to go through their mind and think, well, why should I care about this? Amber cares about it because, she has struggled with XYZ. Oh, I've struggled with that, or maybe something else. And all of a sudden they start putting themselves into the shoes of, well, maybe her solution can work for me too.
Right. Okay. That totally makes sense. All right. So I'm glad I asked that question. Where do you start? You start with your own unique intellectual property based on a framework. And from there, it can really be used in so many places. So like I just shared, that iteration was used in a keynote, first iterations. But then I started looking at it through the lens of what content goes in and goes out of the podcast, what content goes in or out of our social media content. What is it that when I'm on a discovery call, I even use the framework on discovery calls and say, I'm sure you're interviewing many different business coaches. Here's my lane. Here's where I will support you 1,000%. Here's where I don't. These are outside of this. This is, if you need help in these areas, I'm your person. If you need help in areas that are not these 4 pillars, I may not be the coach for you. So I use it in everything I do in my business now.
That's incredible, Amber.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about an ROI.
Yeah, right.
All right. So
what's
it's
interesting is the framework you were asking is that people can get it, right? And so when you're presenting, when it's a framework, you can remember it. So you remember it was stop leverage formula. But then it becomes easier to explain. It becomes easier to talk about because let's be honest, I don't think anyone's woke up any morning and is like, I need a productivity coach. No, right? So then how do they find me? They find me through how do I provide value, which are these 4 pillars and those things I can talk about. So the framework really helped give me the clarity while people can understand it. It gave me the clarity to understand what I was doing too.
Yes. And here's the difference between having that framework, the STOP and what it stands for versus just giving a bunch of tips or tactics. Tactics like batch your task, block off your calendar with certain things. Like we know all those things and they're kind of like all over the place. Like they're here and they're like one thing over here, one thing over, they're not grouped together. When you have a framework, then you can start grouping things together and start, like you said, like having those different pillars and then people can remember it and understand it and start applying it.
Yes. So then we can do this for all types of industries. So share with us, because I've shared a lot about me. This isn't about me. I'm just sharing through my experiences. But talk to me about other clients and industries. And like, I could hear somebody listening to this saying, okay, well, but I'm not teaching on I'm not a thought leader on productivity or this or that. So what could this be used for? And are there some unexpected areas of industries that thought leadership is being used in?
Yeah, so it really is industry agnostic. So it runs the gamut. We have clients who work in supply chain, right? So they work for companies and particularly they're looking for diversifying their supply chain. And so one of our clients, her framework is around the acronym PLAN, PLAN. I don't remember what the letters stand for, but that's what it is. And so we worked with her in a VIP day in the Thought Leader Academy to come up with that. So that's an example. Another one, I'm working with a woman right now on her keynote. She owns a production company in Los Angeles, works with lots of like TV series and things that you would recognize. And so we're working on her keynote. And so we have a framework for her called ACT, ACT. Now, in a keynote, you're not teaching things. So the ACT framework is really more for her to help her remember the order of her talk and what she wants to go through. But the ACT stand for 3 key lessons that she wants to share with the audience. So again, it's original content. It's her intellectual property that she is creating something that's unique and compelling for that audience.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying too, while you and I are business, I'm talking about how I use thought leadership in business. Thought leadership can be used for anything, any movement, something that you're passionate about for a cause or a topic that you want more people to hear about. Am I right? We're talking to business owners because that's who tunes into Productivity Straight Talk, but you're not just a business owner. So perhaps thought leadership is your way of exploring something else that you're passionate about.
Yes. When we work with women in our Thought Leader Academy, one of the things that they do is they choose a container for their thought leadership. So a container could be a podcast or a podcast series, a LinkedIn live show, an event, and so on. One of the things they can do is what I call an initiative. And this could be something where you're kind of getting other people on board. So it's kind of like a cause or advocating for something. So a couple of clients come to mind. One of them, she also owns a PR social media company in Los Angeles. And she has a nonprofit that she founded called Green the Bid. And it's to help more Hollywood production companies get more sustainable, like environmentally conscious and sustainable with their productions that they do. So because there's so much waste, all like whatever it's the lunches or the setups of the stages and so on. So that's her initiative. Another example is another client of ours who started an initiative to help more women of color in healthcare get promoted into leadership. She's an executive in healthcare, so she sees this all the time. So she's getting healthcare organizations to sign on to her initiative so that they are actively working to get more women of color health promoted in their organizations. Because of this initiative that she started in, I think, 2019, she now has a book deal. So a traditional book deal that she got last year, as well as being featured in Forbes and paid speaking engagements because of this work that she's doing.
Excellent. All right. So who is the ideal person for thought leadership? And the reason I'm asking this is because I could have said, I'm not ready to work with you because I don't have a framework, or because I just wanted to teach and stop telling me to tell stories, Kara. So I didn't say that. I said yes, but I can really hear that maybe some people are thinking, am I ready? Am I not ready? So what makes somebody ready to step into wanting to explore thought leadership for themselves?
Oh, that's such a good question, Amber. I don't think anyone's ever asked to be that way. Okay, so here's just off the top of my head, what I would say is that you really feel like whatever you learn for yourself, best practices, lessons, you've learned that for yourself. It has helped you. You've now taken that and you've helped your clients with that. Mm-hmm. But now you want something more. You know that there are more people who could benefit from what you've learned, those hard-won life lessons. And so audiences, whether it's podcasting audiences, stage audiences, conference audiences, are the way for you to have a bigger impact. So I would say number one, like, that there's a bigger impact that you want to have. The second thing is that this maybe, I don't know if I should say this, but maybe you're getting a little bored with your teaching, tactical training content. As experts, there's only so many ways we can say the same thing over and over again. And I know this is maybe why I like creating presentations, because I like researching new topics. And there's always something new that I want to explore for myself and I want to share with others.
I am so glad you said that, though, because I think we're talking to people that like to challenge themselves. Like, we are all business owners who are showing up to better ourselves. And if you're feeling like your area might be getting a little boring, like, look, sign up for putting a podcast every week out. Ask Carol and I how that feels. You will be the container. So you called it a container. Yes. That container is the commitment I made to the container, but the container paid back me. And I couldn't have ever expected being so comfortable with a topic, but also going deeper, like, and exploring and learning like so much more about what I have an opinion on. And I have a lot of opinions on productivity, time management, and business ownership. So, but I would not have had that if I did not push myself to show up and dig deeper.
Love it. Yes. Yeah. Have opinions. Yes. Especially as women, like, we need to, number one, have opinions, but then share our opinions as well. I'm pretty active on Twitter as well. LinkedIn and Twitter are my two favorite social media platforms. And so I follow a lot of journalists and reporters on Twitter because the media uses it a lot. And I see a lot of comments from journalists who say, we want women's sources to quote in our articles. But every time we reach out to women, they tell us it's already been said, or I don't have time for this, or I really don't want to give an opinion on whatever it happens to be. And the male journalists are like, we want to have gender parity in our articles, but women also, there's systemic reasons also why, but women have to be willing to share their opinions too.
Okay, so I'm going to share a story really quick. So I actually don't like Twitter. I do have a Twitter profile. It's dead. Don't go there. I don't tweet anything, but I do jump on there every once in a while. And I was on there, I think I would say just a couple days ago, and somebody wrote, and she wasn't even in productivity. She was like a marketing person. And she's like, I find it very interesting that all these single males have so much opinion on how to be productive for moms with kids that are, professionals or something. Right. And I thought, oh, that is interesting, But that goes back to almost full circle, is that when you are the expert or you show up a way in the world, you don't think it's special anymore. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is why people come to me. I talk about being a mom. I talk about being a wife. I talk about being a business owner. I talk about being a small business owner. Like productivity is very different than if you're an employee or in a big company. And that over the years, my voice isn't what is on every bookshelf, but the voice is my reality of how I'm helping everyday people, which needed to hear it for some reason. Anyways, long story short, that one tweet, I was like, oh, like what if I positioned myself that way as the person that speaks to this particular person? So anyways, long story short, everybody needs to hear someone that is walked the path that is similar. They can see themselves in the person that's giving them the advice.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And then, so back a few years ago, I was kind of looking at an audit at the end of the year of all the podcasts I listened to and all the business and marketing books I had read that year. And I was like, oh, most of them are by men. So many of the business and marketing books that hit the New York Times bestseller list, or even just we see in heavy promotion, are by men. So many of the top podcasts that I was listening to were by men. And I was like, well, I need to be more intentional about seeking out women's voices, because we absorb all of this content from men. And there's good information,
Absolutely.
No doubt, but it is a different perspective. We're absorbing it without critical thinking, without wondering, well, is what worked for them going to work for me? And we really need to make sure that we're balancing that out.
Right. Because by the time it's a bestseller, it's being sold that this is the way. Like just do what's in this book and you'll be more productive, time management, better business owner. Like that is how it's being sold without that critical thinking. And, just like even through my own journey, what I hear back from clients and just experiences is that it's very strategic and tactical, but a lot of compassion. Right. But that's my female energy that's being brought to a very male dominated topic. And instead of seeing that as a weakness, it's actually a strength but I would not have known that until I started listening and hearing clients or people that listen to the podcast feed that back to me. And I'm like, oh, like that is who I am. I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised it's being noticed and talked back. But why it's being noticed is it's generally different than what's popular in the industry. Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
Look, we're having ahas for me too. I feel like that you coached me. This is another coach therapy session. Thank you so much for letting me kind of just chat out too. And also just reflect back on this journey of thought leadership. And you were so much of that. And the reason I wanted us to talk to our listeners about thought leadership is because that might be the thing that shifts for them, or it might make everything else easier. As a business coach, we always want to find the thing that if you do makes everything else easier. And if you were to dedicate yourself to thought leadership and really digging into why it is you do what you do and how you can help people, everything from a tweet to an Instagram post, to a blog article, to a podcast, to speaking on stages becomes easier because you did the foundational work. So
very well said.
There you go. All right. So Carol, if my listeners would like to hear more about Thought Leadership Academy and also connect with you, how do they do that? Where can they go?
Yeah. So if you're obviously you're listening to this podcast right now, you can listen to my podcast called Speaking Your Brand. And we have a quiz to help you identify your speaker archetype. So we've been talking about public speaking, and there's different styles of public speakers. There's just not one style that you have to be or one mold. There's different styles. And I really want you to leverage your natural strengths as far as your communication and speaking style, and then adopt some of the elements from the other styles. So you can take that free quiz. It's 10 questions. It's really fun to take, and you'll get your results right away. That's at speakingyourbrand.com/quiz. Again, that's speakingyourbrand.com/quiz. And when you go there, that's our main website, and you can find information about the Thought Leader Academy there as well.
Excellent. Well, I'll be taking the quiz. I'm intrigued. I want to know what my style is for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts and perspectives all about thought leadership for our listeners, Carol. Thanks.
Thank you, Amber.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Carol as much as I did. It's very interesting to think about how we can rise above the noise and become a thought leader and truly enjoy the work we're doing by making an impact. If you are interested in learning more about thought leadership and how it can serve your business, I highly recommend reaching out to Carol and talking to her about her Thought Leadership Academy. For me, when I decided to dive deeper into really finding my own voice around productivity and how to serve small business owners, I truly believe that the work I do became so much more joyful. And if you think that you have something to share with the world, I am encouraging you to take action. I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. And as a reminder, if you're interested in working with me, I highly recommend that you check out my group business coaching program called Leverage Lab. You can learn more and join us by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/leverage lab. And lastly, if you felt like today's episode or any of the episodes you've heard here at Productivity Straight Talk to be valuable, don't keep it a secret. Share it with another business owner and ask them to take a listen. This will be incredibly helpful to them and also show support in this podcast. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.